How many spankings did you get, Dad, when you were a boy?
Not enough.
Oh.
Well, as what I can remember, I was sort of a normal boy, like all the rest of them. We got our spankings, we got told this and that, and we did normal things just like they do nowadays. They, we think nowadays is terrible, but in our days, the other day we was talking about things that we did, and I think we did things that were almost worse than what they do nowadays. But
Like
we
what?
Yeah, like what?
like what?
Confession time.
Did you put buggies on top of banks?
Buggy? Well, I didn't know. But I know that
It
I
happened.
seen buggies on top of the barn roof,
Oh boy.
but most generally they came back the next day afterwards and they took it back down for them. So,
Did you have a car when you were growing up?
I had a car when I was probably about 17, 18. It was a 48 Buick, not Buick, Chevy.
Two-door. What did you have before that?
Horse
mean-
and buggy.
Okay, you had horse and buggy.
Now tell us your horse story, passing semis.
They don't want to know that.
Oh, yes, we do.
Somebody.
Well, sometimes I think it was, I don't know what they thought.
See, he's sitting
But
up.
they,
He's getting
I had semis that were trying to pass me up. I don't know if they thought the horse was running away, that they pulled back or what. But I had more than one semi that started going around and he finally backed up.
This was way long ago.
Oh, that was in my time.
Exactly. So they're
Semis are a lot
different
bigger
now.
today, but
Yeah.
the horses are still the same. What kind of horses did you like? Four-legged, I mean, other than...
What
They
kind
were
of horse?
four-legged.
Did
Four-legged
you have
horses.
Morgans, or did you have Friesians, or...
He had race horses.
Evidently,
I don't know. I thought it was just,
faster the better.
I just thought it was a horse. My brother, Ivan Harold, or Melvin, if I get it right once, he had this horse before, and so he finally went the way he did. He joined the army, so I got the horse and his buggy. And I did run into the back of a buggy too.
Oh man.
I guess I
Was
was,
that on a date night or anything like that, or
no, it
Sunday
wasn't.
night singing, or...
No, at
You
that
didn't
time
see the buggy ahead? You didn't see the buggy was ahead?
It didn't have taillights at that
It
time.
no tail lights. I
No brake lights.
no, it was my own fault.
Uh-oh.
We was trying to race, and the other one did too, and mine beat it, and I couldn't turn out of the way fast enough. I run in the back of it.
The semis all knew that was going to happen, so they just backed off right away.
Not always, no.
Oh,
My horse, as far as that, there's not too many horses that did that. They could go into a trot and all at once, if he wanted to go faster, he'd go in a pace. That way he had his four legs, two of them on one side would go and whack. Most of them, they used to stumble when they changed from one to the other. But he was a good horse, and he knowed how to do it. So,
Must have been a race horse.
must have been. Especially, I mean, lots of them don't even know.
I
what
think
it is.
I could go from our house, I think it was 6 miles that we had to Middlebury, and we had 6 miles to Goshen, and I could do it in 20 minutes.
Wow.
You were racing.
I guess so.
What?
You
You were racing.
Your brother chose a good horse.
And that horse, when my Melvin had it, when he was a lot of times in Middlebury, when he'd come home, he'd go to sleep. And he'd come down on 20, and he'd always be out on the side of the road. And about a mile and a half or so before he'd get to the road where he was turned to turn off, he'd cross 20 and go on the other side.
That way it wouldn't turn over, flip.
Yeah.
You had a lot more room to go around.
Yeah.
And I know one night somebody left that horse loose in Middlebury, and he went all the way home.
Without you.
And he got somebody to bring him home, and that horse went up on the barn bank to get in the barn so he could unhitch him. And nobody unhitched him. Finally, he turned around, went back down, and he was standing down by the door to go in the bottom of the barn. Horse is pretty smart.
I want to hear that story about when you and Mom were dating and Mom turned the ignition off.
Oh.
Boom!
Were you driving along?
Yeah.
I don't know what I did, but she wanted me to slow down. I don't know. And I didn't want to. Finally, she reached over. I didn't know her. Turned the key off.
She blew the muffler out.
And you kept on dating her, huh?
Yeah.
She heard about
Well,
the
I can
race
tell you
horse.
this too, and she don't know what that means.
Uh-oh.
But one night I went home. I don't know what happened, but it was sort of. And I stopped right out by the road. And I got down on my hands and knees in the car. And I prayed.
What was wrong?
Well, I don't know what it was. You never told me. You wouldn't tell me.
There was some crisis and he was praying through
I
it.
guess. Do I keep dating or not?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what it was, but I know there's something behind something. But so I just stopped out. That was in the middle of the night.
So you didn't have a curfew to be home by midnight?
You
didn't
didn't
have
have
a curfew to go home a certain time of the night, huh?
a curfew
You
to
said
be
it was
home.
the middle of the night. I'm just trying to figure out if it was that past midnight or not.
It wasn't very often that I was home before midnight.
It was or wasn't?
It wasn't very often that it went over midnight that I didn't get home. Well, we had a good time.
In reverse all the way somewhere?
Oh yeah, one time we backed up all the way home.
Yes, and so you couldn't get it out reverse, right?
And we had some visitors sometimes that would come to the windows too.
Peeking.
You mean in your house? In your house?
They
Her
did
house,
that back then.
Your brothers?
most generally Sunday nights.
Chivalry.
The people would come peek in your house?
Yeah.
Window peeking.
Well, tell us now when you first met Mom or when.
Well, maybe we should have Mom talk about her
Okay.
days before dating.
Well, the way I met Grandpa was my brother, he was always good in inviting people. So when he started coming to the conservative church, why, he invited them to our house for Sunday dinner. And I think it was a couple times. And that's how we kind of met each other. And we lived in Millersburg, whoever knows where that is.
I do.
And we had to walk to school, across town.
Uphill both ways.
Yeah,
In the snowstorms.
regardless of what the weather was, I walked to school. And I didn't have any sisters, but I had 3 brothers. and I act like them. I used to play ball with them and do all kinds of things that the boys did, because I had nobody else. Till I was 18, 2 sisters came along at one time.
Finally got your wish.
Finally got my wish. Anyway, I had to write some things down. Today I don't have any brothers, but I have one sister left, and she's here today. She's surprised me a couple times already now. It was a small town, so it wasn't too big to walk through. It was about 5 blocks, I guess, I used to walk. But I had a lot of cousins, boys and girls, and we used to have a lot of fun just like we do here. Who knows what my grandfather did?
He was a carpenter.
He was a watch me.
Watch
no.
fixer.
Yeah.
He was called an Amish watch fixer. And so he had this high desk, and we used to stand on the chair and watch him fix clocks and watches, which was quite interesting at times.
Yep.
They lived in a long lane.
Yep.
I don't know why we're still living, but my parents, and well, you didn't say when your dad died. When you were what?
I was 16 when I remember how it was on a Sunday. He was in the bed. The whole family, and I think there was some other people there too. But we was all standing around the bed when he passed away.
Had he been sick?
Yeah, he had. It was probably about a year before that. That was in the spring. He had went to the doctor. And my dad told the doctor, he said, whatever it is, he said, I want to know it. I don't want it round the bush. And finally he said, well, he said, it's cancer. And he said, what you have in young people, it goes fast. In old people, it goes slow. And he said he's young. And just the other night, I thought he was in the early 40s. But the other night, sounded like it was around 49 or something like that. But anyhow, it was in the spring when he went to the doctor. And that winter, I think it was around December or something like that, he passed away.
Your mother was still living at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, she lived then yet for, well, after we was married, it's like that. Yeah, we had.
Oh,
Well,
until
we-
1975?
Lorena was a baby when she passed away.
Lorena?
Farida?
Regina.
Oh, Regina.
Regina.
I
Regina.
remember your
We
mom.
all remember going to Harold Mommy's house.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Big fern.
You know that fern is still alive. I don't know if you know it or not.
That's in our living room.
Yeah.
It's still part of that fern. And one time when pictures of Romans girls asked if it was sure the same one, because they used to crawl underneath the fern and sit there, the children.
Because the fronds were so long.
Yeah, they hit the floor.
What did your dad do for a living?
My dad?
No,
Grandpa.
Grandpa.
Oh,
I didn't get it.
What did your dad do for a living?
Well, we farmed, and he did carpenter work. He made us boys do the farming and stuff until like in the haying and stuff like that. Well, then he'd help as far as that, and planting. He most down plant his corn and stuff like that. But then we did the rest pretty well.
Did you have cows?
Yeah, we had.
Milk cows?
I think we was up 8, 10 cows, something like that. But we milked them by hand too.
Right.
How old were you when you left the Amish church?
Huh?
How old were you when you left the Amish church?
I was,
Probably 19.
yeah, probably 19, 20, right in that area.
That you left or your parents left?
No, I left.
You did. But your parents stayed Amish?
Well, my mom did.
Yeah, your mom. Right.
But
The
she-
reasons, I might as well say, the reason she left them finally, Harold would take her because she couldn't, at first, well, she used to take the horse and buggy and go to church. But finally she couldn't do that anymore. So Harold would take her to the church. And finally the church didn't accept that anymore.
Because he drove her in a car.
Yeah,
Isn't that different today, huh?
yeah,
That was Rose, right?
Yes.
yeah. Her name was Rose.
Of course, I don't know, would they have allowed somebody else?
With a buggy to come.
No,
pick her
I meant,
Instead of
today
family.
everybody goes by van to a church and all that kind of stuff, you know, they visit church. If it had been somebody that wasn't from the Amish church that brought her, would have they'd have fussed about it. You know, it's immaterial, but
Well, if they'd have probably, well, most of what you're talking about, they're going to different churches visiting.
yeah.
Yeah, that way they probably wouldn't have said anything. But things that she was,
Had Harold joined the church though too?
Yeah.
he had left the Amish church too already.
Right, yeah. That's what I meant.
When you left, then where did you attend?
Pleasant Grove.
Pleasant Grove. You made that an immediate switch, or was there time in between there?
I was working for John O. Miller on a farm.
Okay.
And,
Chicken farm.
and of course, I and him, we had good talks and stuff like that. I'll say this. You'll probably laugh as far as that. But I know the first night that I was there, first day, in the evening, well, he said, we're having devotion. And he said, you don't have to stay if you don't want to. And I know we at home, we always had prayer, night and morning as far as that. And we always knelt. And of course, when he said that, I really didn't know what he meant by what he meant when he said devotion. So I said, I'll just go to bed. So I went to bed. But the next morning, we had breakfast, and he said, we'll have devotion again. What was I going to do, go to bed? Or run off? So anyhow, I stayed there, and we had our devotion. And from that time on, evenings and mornings, I was there with them for devotion. And I vowed to God, I said, if I ever get married, I said, this is what I want. And this is what we did. I don't know what my wife thought when we had, the first night we had our devotion. When I got up, I turned around, to kneel down. I don't know what she thought, but she did. She kneeled down too, so.
Grandma, were you
So
used
what
to
was
that? Did you have family roasting?
No.
What was we?
Once in a while we did, seem like. I remember one time we were driving, my folks were, and they got in an argument. And my dad stopped right there on this road, pulled to the side, and he prayed. I'll never forget that. So if you have arguments, pray.
Anyhow, I guess I know where I was. Then when I finally left the Amish, I went with John to church. And that's the way I started going to the Conservative Mennonite Church then.
So you were sharing earlier with a couple of us guys on your conversion. So was that in the Amish church or was that in Pleasant Grove?
Where your conversion was.
Well, I would say that started when I was baptized. That's when I
In the
say
Amish church.
that was in the Amish church.
That was in the Amish church. Okay.
And like I had said today, it's yes, like John said. I think that if the time comes that we have to make the commitment and ask God to come into our hearts and stuff like that. And it ain't just one time that you have to do that. We all do. We all make mistakes. We fail. And we have to come back to God and ask Him to forgive us and to live in our hearts and life. But, it ain't just a one-time job as far as that I say. And it is a continually growing experience.
In your school days, did you go 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 8? Did you go to college?
I went to the 8th grade.
2-room school, 1-room school?
No, it was a 8th grade school. What I meant, the school had 8th grade.
I just checked.
Yeah.
Oh,
It was a one-room country school, wasn't it, with one teacher?
well, it was the first and second were together. The third and fourth, fifth and sixth, and seventh and eighth. That's the way it was. And one teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 1 room. And you, Mom?
Yeah, I went to this there in Millersburg. No, I first went to a one-room schoolhouse over at LaGrange County.
Are
And
you hot?
a little bit. Anyway, I walked to school too. Sometimes I'd had a corner across the fields. It didn't take me very long. But if I walked out around, there was other children that came, and there was always this boy. Can't even think of what his name was anymore. He was so mean, he'd trip us when we were walking. So I always went to the field if I could. He was a mast. And it was kind of their boys were kind of mean.
And you went 8th grade.
I went 8th grade. That time. I mean, later I went to the Millersburg School, which was an all-grade school, which was in a big building.
But only till 8th grade.
Yeah.
But that was very normal at that time, right?
Yeah. I went to school later.
After 8th grade?
Yeah.
Nursing.
Oh, nursing. Did you have to get a high school diploma before you could go to nursing?
I had to take a test.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then what else was it? I took grades. I went to school for a nurse aide and passed that and worked a year in the school. Then they asked, at the hospital, I mean. Then they asked me and said, we watched you. We would like you to go on to either work in maternity ward or in the emergency room. Well, I didn't like maternity ward too good. So I said, I'll take the emergency room. So there was a number of us that took that class, but I was the only one that went on into emergency room. I worked 16 years in the emergency room.
Really?
I was
Did you
one
work?
of the patients.
Did you work full time?
Yeah, I think I did it first. Then later, I kind of went to part-time. The last I was part-time. But the emergency room, sometimes you worked a couple shifts even if there was a lot of going on.
Right.
I helped, in the later years, I helped some with surgeries. I a lot of times helped with hip surgeries because I was sitting there and would hold the leg so it would stretch out. And sometimes afterwards I couldn't hardly let my fingers loose. because I was sitting so long. What are you laughing at me?
No, we're laughing at you.
Oh, look at that.
Nice. Oh,
Oh my word,
man.
that's awesome.
It is hot out here.
Look at you guys. You don't have to edit this all out.
Which way you going?
We're gonna have to go. Well,
This way.
can't we go like put your guys' end down there?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to run this way?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it can get more of that sun blocked.
Woohoo! Good job.
Watch it.